and good afternoon from Dubai. Is my audio clear? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So, welcome to our 70th live webinar. My name is Mylene Chan, and I am delighted to be here with you today again alongside the TDCC training team. And we are excited to bring you another interesting topic today, understanding dyslexia assessment. So, on behalf of TDCC, we would like to thank our 202 advocates coming from 19 countries who registered for this session. To those who have joined us live and here and on YouTube, thank you for your time and presence. We would like to acknowledge our registrants from Algeria, Ethiopia, Egypt, Hong Kong, Greece, from India, Indonesia, from Jordan, Lebanon, Nigeria, from Oman, Pakistan, Philippines, Qatar, Russia, from Saudi Arabia, South Africa, from the United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates. So, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Before we begin, let me share a short video about TDCC and our team speaker for today. Thank you.
Welcome to the TDCC Community Live webinar.
TDCC stands for the Developing Child Center located in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, UAE.
Established in 2012. We have been providing personalized support to over 1,000 children. We have 60 dedicated and committed experts, and we work closely with parents and schools to ensure no child is left behind. We think different, we teach different. We empower, not limit children. Labels like autism, dyslexia, and ADHD are not relevant or perceived as disabilities, difficulties, or disorders that limit children's abilities. We believe that brilliance needs difference. The TDCC services are available in English, French, and Arabic. The inclusive educational services nurture and support the developmental and educational needs and help empower each child to reach their full potential. Occupational therapy assists children in performing and achieving important learning and developmental skills they need in life. Psychomotor therapy is a healthcare profession that is based on a holistic view of the person and is involved in the treatment of different disorders. Speech and language therapy assists children who have disorders of speech, language, communication, and swallowing. Psychology provides both educational and clinical services, including counseling and parenting. ABA therapy focuses on improving specific behaviors. It is commonly practiced as a therapeutic intervention for individuals with autism. Specialist learning support. We assist in developing the academic and social development of students who need support in all these areas. And we design and host local and international training and workshops for practitioners, parents, caregivers, and educators. Just like this one today. We have a few rules to follow during the webinar. Please remain muted while the speaker is presenting. Please give your full attention to the presentation. We will be sending you the replay, so you can review at any time. Please be interactive if the speaker requests your participation. During the question and answer session, we kindly request everyone to type their questions in the chat box and the speaker will address them.
Welcome to the 70th TDCC webinar Understanding Dyslexia Assessment. TDCC is honored to present to you our speaker Zara Mirza. Zara is an accomplished educator and advocate with a master's degree in inclusion and special education from the University of Birmingham. She is an associate member of the British Dyslexia Association and a member of PATOS UK. With over 20 years of experience, Zara has specialized in supporting children with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and learning challenges in both the UK and UAE. Her approach is underpinned by advanced certifications in Orton Gillingham, Science of Reading, and other evidence-based educational practices. She serves as the Dyslexia Assessor and Head of Learning Support Services at TDCC. A key figure in neurodiversity advocacy, Zara is a prominent voice advocating for more inclusive representation in autism research and interventions. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Zara Mirza.
Hello, Zara. How are you?
Hi, Mylene. I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction.
You may share screen now. Thank you.
All right, brilliant. I am going to get myself started and good afternoon. Thank you very, very, very much for being here right now, for registering for this webinar, and for the fantastic, wonderful, very thoughtful questions that have been shared by the registrants before the event. And also, a very big thank you to TDCC for providing us with this fantastic community platform so that we are not exactly working in a little silo. We can really, really reach out to the wider community and discuss topics like this one today. Who needs a dyslexia assessment? Why should we do a dyslexia assessment? What's the right time? And what does an actual dyslexia assessment look like? So, in a nutshell, this is what we are going to be talking about today. So, let's get ourselves started. Before we start talking about the actual assessment of dyslexia, it's really important for us to understand what dyslexia is. And in order to understand dyslexia, we have to understand what reading is. So, bizarre as it may sound, reading is actually a very unnatural process. So, reading is not something that happens naturally. It doesn't, just because your child is surrounded by books, just because you are reading books to your child, that does not necessarily translate to them being able to read. The best analogy that I can give that is if you throw a young child or even an adult into the deep end of a swimming pool or into the ocean and they've never learned how to swim, they are going to sink, they are going to drown. Reading is exactly the same thing. It has to be taught through explicit instruction and teaching. Now, and again, this is one of those excellent questions that have come through. What's the difference between someone just not being able to read, reading failure, and dyslexia? And this is a very, very, very important thing that we need to address. Now, a child not being able to read can come from any different number of reasons. Maybe the child has never ever been taught in the correct manner. The teachers do not have the correct training or know how to teach a child how to read. That's the first thing. What if the child has hearing loss that has never been picked up on? The child cannot hear or can only hear parts of speech and sound. If you can't hear, and reading is a auditory process, you can't read. In the US right now, there's a lot of data coming through showing us extraordinarily high numbers of reading failure across 7 to 10-year-old children. So in some areas of the US, these numbers are almost as high as 1 in 4 children who cannot read at an age expected level. Now, does that mean that 1 in 4 child between the ages of 7 and 10 are dyslexic? No. What is happening in the US is a failure of good reading curriculum, a failure of good reading resources being made available across public schools. And therefore, there is a very big move in the US right now of revamping the reading curriculum. So, not all reading failure or failure to attain in reading is because of dyslexia. And we are going to deep dive that into in a little bit in the next slide. What I want to do right now is explain or present dyslexia as a spectrum condition. So when I say a spectrum condition, it's not necessarily a linear condition like this. I'm talking about it as a spectrum condition, a spectrum presentation. So what happens with the spectrum presentation is we have a child who, and also with this spectrum condition, it's very important to know that we don't have a start point and an end point of dyslexia. This is not where dyslexia starts and you get to this particular point and dyslexia ends. There's no such thing. When we talk about it as a spectrum, we talk about the impact of a dyslexic type learning presentation on an individual. All of that coming up. So the first thing is why should we be assessing for dyslexia? The reason why we should be assessing for dyslexia is because we want, first of all, if that assessment is taking place for a child, we want to make sure that the child has got a school support plan or an individual educational plan. And by the laws of this country, I cannot comment. I know that we have an international audience over here, but by the laws of this country and most of the Western countries, having a school support plan, and those school support plans are very bespoke, that is a legal right. A school is supposed to, they're legally obligated to provide you with those services once your child has been diagnosed with dyslexia. Now, when I say that the school is legally obligated to provide you with those services, the school equally may not have the resources to provide those services. So when we go through with an assessment, and if we find out that a child is dyslexic, we create lots and lots of bespoke recommendations for them. And then we take those recommendations to the family and to the school. What happens after that is pretty much a process of negotiation. Schools say, all right, these are the resources that we have, and these are the supports that we can provide. But all of these supports that you're asking for are beyond our current resource allocation. And therefore, then the parents might be asked to source those things privately on their own. It's not necessarily just for school. Dyslexia support and dyslexia assessment go across the lifespan because it's not like you finish year 13, you leave school, and suddenly you have stopped being dyslexic. You will remain dyslexic while you're in university. Okay, you will remain dyslexic while you are a working adult. So dyslexia assessments are also carried out for support, the correct support in tertiary education, which is university, and adult dyslexia assessments allow people, this is not that it's not that ingrained here in this part of the world yet, but again, across most Western countries, so I'm talking about Western Europe, the US, Canada, this sort of places, Australia, New Zealand, you will find that there are workplace access arrangements and accommodations for neurodivergent adults. So this is the why. This is why we do a dyslexia assessment. It is simply the doors that have been closed. It's literally just throwing them wide open by saying, this person has now got a legal identification of dyslexia, and this is why they need all of these supports. And these support plans are not, there's not a cookie cutter approach to this. The assessment allows us to take a deep dive into a person's neurology, and what we create is very bespoke to that particular individual. So the support plans are very much individualized. Okay. Now, this question has come through again and again, and I get this asked so many times. What is the right age for a child to be assessed? And the simple answer to that is not below the age of 7. Now, why do we kind of have this cutoff below the age of 7? There are two things. The first thing is that a dyslexia assessment, no one should be made to wait to be formally assessed and diagnosed with dyslexia. Um, that is not your that's not the gatekeeper for help and intervention. So help and intervention really ought to have been given at the first sign, the earliest signs emerging of there being something, oh, there's something going on over here. Okay, that can be as early as 18 months old with language not developing. It can be as early as FS1 with a child simply not getting the alphabetic principle. The alphabetic principle is simply A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So not being able to know that these are letters. And towards the end of FS1, which is reception year, sort of around the age of 4, being able to map a sound onto a letter, a child is just not getting it. They don't know that this particular squiggle makes the sound. So in those very early years, a child not getting the alphabetic principle, that's our first indication that this child needs extra help. Now, are we going to say at the age of 4 that this child is dyslexic and please send them off to an education psychologist or an assessor to be assessed for dyslexia? Absolutely not. And the reason for that is you really need to give children the time to develop those cognitive skills to be able to read. You can't diagnose formal clinical levels of reading failure till you've given someone the opportunity, the time, and the correct access to curriculum to learn those skills. It's kind of like, okay, forget the analogies. Right. So just coming back to what I was talking about. A dyslexia assessment is not a gatekeeper to getting access to intervention. Intervention needs to be given to a child, and intervention can take any form. Ideally, it should take the form of child being pulled into small group or individual one-to-one support while they're at school. It has to be delivered by a trained teacher. It has to be delivered by a trained teacher using a evidence-based curriculum. So if you're just pulling something off the internet or off of Instagram and you think that this is an intervention which can be delivered by any single person, no, that's not really an intervention. We do want intervention to be high quality. Now, where you might not have children who have access to curricula, who have access to trained teachers, there are evidence-based apps that are available that take children through a systematic, structured program of phonics, and not many of them are gate kept behind very high paywalls. So that is what needs to happen in those early years. Now, what happens sort of between the ages of 5 to 7 in those 2 years? What we see in those 2 years is this child responding to intervention. Now, if you have a class of 25, you might have in the early years 10 kids in FS1 in year 1 who have been flagged up as requiring intervention. What will happen is that between KG2 or FS2 and year 1 or year 2, out of those 10, 6 will catch up. So these are average numbers, by the way. Out of those 10 who were needing intervention, 6 will catch up, and your data will show you, oh, yeah, they're fine now. They've caught up. They're reading at where they're expected to read. Might not be the brightest reading sparks in your classroom, might not love reading, but they're fine. They're all right. But you will have, on average, in a class of 25, 4 kids who have not responded to that intervention. You have given them at least 6 months of solid intervention of some form. It might even take the form of home tutoring. But nothing is happening. That needle might be moving but it might be moving just a teeny tiny little bit, whereas the gap between where the child is at and where the child is supposed to be is simply growing. Now, these are the children who are going to be sent places like our setting to people like myself for a dyslexia assessment. And that is why we say do not assess before the age of 7. Okay, so age of 7 is when we assess. And I would say 7 to 99 years old, anyone can be assessed for dyslexia. Ideally, obviously, we want to do it as early as we possibly can, simply to get people help so they don't internalize failure. They don't become frustrated and disengaged from the learning process. So the earlier we assess, the closer to 7, the better. But we can keep assessing from 7 up until the instruments that we use go up till the age of 99 years. What is the process? Now, this is a slightly longer one, but I do want to demystify it a little bit. I do want to talk in detail about what the process of a dyslexia assessment looks like. This might differ from one assessor to another. It might differ from one setting to another, but broadly speaking, the process of a dyslexia assessment is fairly similar. So the first thing that is going to happen is that it's going to get flagged up. If you're in the British curriculum, you're year 2. If you're grade 1 in the US curriculum, other curricula, sort of around the age of 7, everything else is going absolutely fine. Your kid is socially aware, they are emotionally intelligent, they might even be, not always, but they might even be very good at math. They're chatty, they love doing life, they might be very creative, they might be very good at sport. It's just the learning part of things. Everything is going like this, and the reading part of things is kind of like down here. Now, it might not only be reading, it might be reading, sort of going okay, but spelling and writing are absolute bits. And you're also getting lots and lots of emotions happening around those things. So those are the things that will be noticed by yourself. It may or may not be flagged by school. The opposite is also true. School is constantly been flagging it up with the family, but the family are like, no, but it's fine. Like, do your job. You're supposed to teach them how to read. So it could be, or it could be that everyone is kind of aligned and on the same page that there's something going on here. So the first thing is that you reach out to us. When you reach out to us, you are sent a questionnaire. If it is a learning, if your inquiry is about a learning difficulty, we really want to know if you have done an eye exam in the past 3 to 4 months, if you have done a hearing test in the past 6 months. And I always want these two things ticked off before I have people come into this space and speak with me, because those are very important, crucial things. The first thing that happens is that I meet with, if it's a child, I'm just going to talk about child over here. If it is a child below the age of 18, I speak with the parents and I talk about the child's developmental history. And their developmental history starts all the way from the point of mom's pregnancy. So, early developmental history, what was your pregnancy like? Was a child born full term? If the child was born full term, did they need any kind of intervention in those first few minutes of being born? Was the child placed in an incubator, or did they go home immediately? So these sort of questions. Then we start talking about those very early years of a child's development. We need history on what was their latch like when they were feeding, because a lot of children have tongue ties, and tongue ties have a huge correlation with dyslexia and reading difficulties later on. A child crawling. So children who have missed crawling have kind of skipped over a very crucial developmental phase. All of this is the information that I get from the parents in that first meeting, which is about 40, 45 minutes. There will also be a lot of digging deeper down into the child's educational history, their linguistic history, their social and emotional development. So it's an exchange of information where I am getting a lot of information and building this 360-degree view of the child. And also then the parents are asking similarly a lot of questions of, why is crawling important? Okay. If the child is giving up too easily, is it only happening if there's not resilience? Is it everywhere in their life, or is it only with reading and spelling? What are their emotions around for when they sit down to do their homework? What, crucially, what interventions have already taken place for a child? So that's a good chunk of an hour that is spent on gathering that information in that very first meeting. Now, from there, we can go either way. We can say, okay, let's first of all screen this child. It's a 15-minute quick process. By listening to the parents, I already know what the screener is going to be telling. It's either going to tell me that we're in the clear, or it's going to tell me we're definitely not in the clear, or it's going to give me this middle ground. Okay, so if we're in the clear, we do the screener. So the parents have a piece of paper that shows that you're fine, and we say goodbye, and that's it. If you're not in the clear, I tell the parents, like, this is looking likely, and you also know it's looking likely, and we are likely looking at doing a full diagnostic assessment here. If you're kind of in the middle, I'll talk about that later on. Okay, so that's your first 1 hour. What your next step is going to look like is an exchange of what we call qualitative data. So I'm going to be sending out forms, fairly detailed forms, to be filled out by the family, to be filled out by the school, the teacher who works closely, most closely with the child, and to be filled out by the child themselves, because that gives me a lot of information. Okay, so that information again is processed by myself during the process of creating this picture of the child. The third step of the process involves the child coming into this setting for 2 to 3 hours. We might even take 4 hours, and we do a very deep analysis of everything related to processing of language, expressive language, receptive language, processing of language, reading, writing, spelling, comprehension, handwriting, the speed of handwriting, the clarity of handwriting. So it's a very, very involved process which can take up to 4 hours. And it was one of the questions that was asked repeatedly, which standardized tests are used. So this may again vary from setting to setting. Here at TDCC, we use CTOP for phonological processing. We use the Wyatt 3 for getting our data on, particularly on expressive language. And I am a very big fan and a proponent of the newly published test of dyslexia, which gives me the chunk of the data that I'm looking for. So that is the process. Once that testing process is done, all of the data is with myself as the tester, as the assessor, and I am going to then use that data to generate a report and a bank of recommendations. Which brings us to this next part. What happens after the diagnosis? So step one, what happens after the diagnosis? Depending on the age of the child, they may or may not join us for a meeting like this. But in my experience, my first feedback meeting is always with the carers and the parents. And we sit down and we talk through the findings of the report and the recommendations that have been put in place in that. So that's our first meeting. And at that point in time, it's very collaborative. It is about giving the parents the resources to not just to process all the information that they have been given, but also the emotional support that families need to navigate this post-diagnostic world that they now have. And there are fantastic resources out there for families. So that's our first meeting, and then the report is with the parents. It's their legal property, and parents then usually connect me with the school, and then we have a collaborative meeting with the school where we talk about how to best create an educational plan to support this child in their main setting. And that results in something which is called an IEP or an SSP. Okay. For older children post 14, 15 years of age who are about to sit their end of school exams, this also means giving them access to exam accommodations. So exam accommodations usually look like, if the scores suggested, recommended, it may look like them having extra time in exams, taking their exams in a separate room. It may involve the use of a laptop that has spell check enabled. It may involve them having access to a adult human support, someone to read questions to them. It may also even involve them having access to a scribe. So the child is speaking out the answers to a question, and a scribe is writing the answers for them. So all of that is part of our post-diagnostic support. Post-diagnostic support also involves onward referrals. So if it turns out that a child has got ADHD and dyslexia, then we need to support this element of things as well, which is going to be, depending on the child, it may take several forms. Onward referrals might include, and frequently do include, referrals to speech and language therapy if there is a lisp, if there's a stutter or a stammer, because those guys need to correct it. Particularly in case of dysgraphia and dyspraxia, occupational therapy referrals are very, very commonly made for individuals who are dyslexic. Okay, and I really believe in giving support to the families, because sometimes it can be such a huge thing. Like, oof, is my child ever going to go off to university? And it's in so many of your questions that have been shared to us, like, what is my child's life going to look like when they're an adult? I can tell you right now, they're going to be fine. If dyslexia is the only thing they have, they are going to be fine. School is the worst time for dyslexic children. And it's because of the way schools are. We're getting better at it, but are we perfect? Not quite there. Okay, the last bit is not necessarily relevant for us here in the UAE, but because we assess for older young people going off to university, assessment reports also enable university students who are dyslexic to apply for DSA, which is the Disabled Student Allowance. There is also a person statement that UCAS asks for, and you can talk about your neurodivergence in there, not just to get the support that you need in university, but also to show how resilient and hardworking you are. And finally, dyslexia assessment post-diagnostic support can involve support at the workplace. So unfair dismissals and all of that is also something that assessors very often support with post-diagnosis. So that's who should we assess, when should we assess, what does the process look like, what happens after an assessment has been done. So the process it has been described. I'm just going to take 10 more minutes to talk about some of the questions that have come through. And then if we can have another 10 minutes at the end we're just going to open it up to everyone who has any specific questions to ask me. So these are the biggest questions that have come in. And I've kind of pulled them together in these headings. Now, the one that has come through the most often is people asking about dyslexia in a second language, dyslexia in Arabic. Particularly, there has been a lot of questions about how are we going to, are there tools to assess for dyslexia in Arabic? So let me talk about that one first of all. So tools to assess dyslexia in Arabic are currently being developed. Do we have currently a standardized dyslexia assessment tool? No, we don't. Part of it has to do with the fact that Arabic within the countries, within the GCC, the dialect and the language itself is very, very different. So I'm just going to share very quickly with you. Here's this thing. Mm, here we go. So if we go to this gentleman, his name is Dr. Gad Al-Bahari, and he's based in Egypt, and he is one of the leading authorities on assessing and looking and developing tools in for dyslexia support in Arabic. And I don't understand Arabic, so you can go to his website. It's called the Lighthouse Center in Egypt. And here you are going to get an Arabic online screener. Okay, he is also creating a dyslexia reading assessment in Arabic. It has not yet been published, but hopefully it will happen soon. And he's also got fantastic resources in Arabic for those who want to explore it. Okay, so that's this gentleman here, Dr. Gad Al-Bahari. He is the foremost authority on dyslexia in Arabic. Now, coming back to another question that was asked, that again by several people, that can you be dyslexic in one language and not dyslexic in another? So very simply, the answer is that dyslexia is happening at the level of your neurology. All right. So it's not something which is happening at any other level. It's not happening at the level of your vision. It's your neurology. You are dyslexic at a neurological level. Now, how does that dyslexia impact on your learning in different languages? Actually depends on the language. So what that means is, let me see if I can. Okay, not happening right now. So English is a very opaque language. So we have 26 letters, and those 26 letters make 44 sounds. The bigger the disconnect between the number of phonemes, which is the letter, sorry, the number of graphemes, which is the letters, and the number of phonemes, which is the sound. The bigger that discrepancy, the more opaque the language is. So the impact of learning to read, write, and spell in English is a lot more in English. Okay. We also have languages like Arabic. Now, in Arabic, we happen to have greater correspondence and linkages between the letters and the sound. So Arabic compared to English is a more transparent language. So the dyslexia is not going to be that big of a barrier in learning to read, write, and spell in Arabic. All right. So it's not necessarily that you're not dyslexic in another language. It's simply your dyslexia poses a lower barrier to fluent and accurate reading, writing, and spelling in a transparent language as compared to an opaque language. All right. So where were my questions? Here are my questions. Just going to go back. Co-occurring conditions. So this came through quite often, that does dyslexia happen on its own? Do dyslexic children need to see an occupational therapist? What does that look like, etc.? So what I'm going to do now is I am going to share the newest definition that we have for dyslexia. And if anyone is interested, you can look it up yourself. It's called the Delphi definition of dyslexia. I'm just going to have a sip of water. So this is the definition that we now map to when we're diagnosing dyslexia. And I just want you to take a look at this. In all of the years that I've been working in this field, I've never seen dyslexia happen on its own. Dyslexia is always, it's kind of like, if this is dyslexia, there's always linkages to other things. So some of the most common ones are, personally in my experience, it's dyspraxia and it's ADHD. So it's never ever one thing that needs to be supported. It's a constellation of things that needs to be supported. And this is why diagnostic assessments are so important. They're so crucial because when you are doing that really deep dive into a person's neurology, you'll find out that, it's not just the fact that they can't read and write and spell. That is something that you can see apparent, it's there. But what's causing them not to read, write, and spell? Is it developmental DLT, the developmental language disorder? It is that their ADHD is so elevated that they cannot hold attention for more than 3 minutes at a time. Is the inability to produce good writing coming from the fact that they are not just dyslexic, they're also dyspraxic, they cannot organize their ideas. So, yes, dyslexia definitely co-occurs with a number of other conditions. We now recognize that it's part of the assessment process, and that is why the support plans that are produced always have onward referrals to deep dive into other aspects of a person's neurology, and support plans always have support for the other things that the other barriers that the child may be experiencing. So back to your Q&As, who can assess the checklists and the tools? Who can assess? I will only comment on who can assess here because it varies from place to place. In the UAE, to be an assessor, to have a diagnostic assessment done, it can only be done by educational psychologists or assessors like myself who are licensed by the Community Development Authority, the CDA. In the UK, it is slightly different. It just varies from place to place. But in the UAE, you need a CDA license to be an assessor. Checklist. I'm not a fan of checklists at all. There's no checklist that can assess a specific learning difficulty like dyslexia. The tools I have already spoken about, VESHLA, Woodcock-Johnson, CTOP, Test of Dyslexia, Kaufman. These would be the five major ones, and you need to and also for the writing, you need DASH. So these would be the big six, and I tend to use Test of Dyslexia, DASH, VESHLA, CTOP. So these are my four, and I pull subtests from each of them depending on how the child is presenting and how the assessment is processing to give me the most complete picture that I can build. A lot of people have asked about the early indicators of dyslexia. And I think, again, that is something I have covered when I was talking about it. If a child, I can talk about risk factors. So the biggest risk factor, dyslexia is highly genetic. If you have a child who, if your family has neurodivergence in there, there's a parent who was dyslexic, a grandparent who was suspected to be dyslexic because we didn't have that much testing back then. If any of those things are happening, then 100% you are at risk for dyslexia. And the other risk factors involve any kind of difficulty with acquiring fluent and accurate speech at the correct age. Children who have had speech disorders diagnosed or apparent to the family sort of around the age of 18, 24 months, that is where, because see, reading is, it's our ability to hear. When we hear, we produce sound. So yes, we read using our eyes, but our ability to hear and produce sound is what creates our ability to be able to read. And that was my 10-minute timer. And I don't think I am allowed to. No, hang on. I can just take one more because it's a really important one which came up lots and lots. And that is the use of AI tools. And I I'm a really, really big fan of AI tools. Okay, so what might AI tools look like? Uh, I can't show it here. So simply, Word, if you have a Google, you have Google Chrome or something, using Word, Docs, Sheets, all of them have a little, if I can show it to you, hang on. I don't have anything open right now, so I won't be able to show it to you. I'll try and post it somewhere, maybe on my Instagram, what AI tools there are in assistive technology. All of them, none of them are actually gate kept behind paywalls. So there is a fantastic way of using speech to text. You even on an iPad, you simply have to press the little button that looks like a microphone, and then it dictates everything to you. On a Word document, a simple Word document, you can highlight the text and then it can read it out to you. Your child, a textbook can be given to you as an ebook, and you can have, if that is in your laptop, you can have AI tool Gemini just read it out to you. Google's Gemini also has a fantastic, fantastic tool of analyzing information. I'll try and put that up somewhere. But that particular tool critically analyzes information. So you can put your textbook chapter, upload it onto that AI tool. It analyzes all of that information and it can literally present it to you like a podcast. So you just put your headphones in and you listen to a critical analysis of the streetcar named Desire, chapters 1, 2, and 3 as a podcast. Fantastic, fantastic tool for dyslexic individuals. And honestly, the rate at which artificial intelligence, AI, is developing, at which assistive tech is developing, it's hard to keep up. And I often find that children who I'm assessing have found the tools that work best for them before we even step in. So big, big fan of AI here. Right. Last 5 minutes, I'm going to try and see as many questions as I can pick up from the chat. Orton Gilligan. Right. So now Orton Gilligan, it's not a program. Orton Gilligan is an approach. Just the way we can say that synthetic phonics is an approach. And there are many, many programs out there that are based on Orton Gilligan. There are trainings that are offered on Orton Gilligan. Is there a single program that is supposed to be the best? Is there a best intervention? The simple answer is no. So in this space, we not only assess, we also provide interventions. Interventions are completely bespoke. I have about 6 or 7 programs that I have purchased, and on a given day, for a given group or for a given child, I might be pulling aspects of 3 to 4 different programs to deliver something which is completely bespoke to them for those 60 minutes. So it's an approach. Learning that approach is good, it's evidence-based, but are there evidence-based one-stop shop programs out there that solve every single thing? The short answer is no. Are there different types of dyslexia? No, they're not. It's one of those popular myths. Again, I've seen certain, like particularly from the Levant region, assessments coming through where they say that somebody has got visual dyslexia. Uh, my training is more UK based, and there we just simply have dyslexia. We don't kind of split it up into any kind of subtypes. So, sorry, diagnosed with DLD, struggles to memorize alphabet and read. Yes, so basically, Huda, what you're describing over here is something which is called phonological processing disorder. And if I very quickly share the Delphi definition with you, the most commonly observed cognitive impairment in dyslexia is difficulty in phonological processing. All right, so that is our ability. If you think of this wall behind me, you will know that this wall is made up of bricks. For a dyslexic individual, a wall is just a wall. So a word is just a word. They cannot process the individual sounds in a word. So sound, sound, is made up of 4 sounds. But a dyslexic person cannot do this. Because if I can do sound, I can then do, if I change this to r, I know that the word becomes round. So that, in a nutshell, is what parts of phonological processing disorder look like. Um, is there anything else? Uh, all right. So I have had a lot of questions here, and when you guys were signing up for the webinar about intervention, and what should intervention look like? What should, you're most welcome for that. What should intervention look like? What should I do for a child of a specific age, etc.? I am just going to say that interventions are very, very bespoke. I cannot talk about interventions here during the last 3 minutes that we kind of have left. I'm just going to share this here. This is our final screen. If you are kind enough to give us a follow on Instagram, this is my personal one, and this is the TDCC. We host a lot of webinars throughout the year talking about all of these things and then some more. And I will make a personal point over the next few weeks to show you the interventions and the strategies that I use in this room here for particularly for spelling, because that is something that people tend to ask about most. So just a few good, nice spelling strategies, easy to do for you at home or in your classroom, and some reading strategies as well. So quick fire, understanding dyslexia assessment. I really, really hope that you guys took away something useful for yourselves, for your families from here. And I believe Mylene has been kind enough to share all of our contact information. So please save that. And if you have any really, really important burning questions, drop me an email. I will get back to you. It won't happen right away, but I will. Either through a direct email or I'll post something on my Instagram for you guys. Okay. Mylene, I think over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Zara. Thank you for this very insightful and yes, very useful topic today. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you also to those who joined us live our live stream on YouTube, and we will be sending the recording to you. So once again, Sarah, thank you. Join us again for the next webinar happening on October 14 with our topic AAC in the classroom.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.